I'm Pamela from Content Clarity and welcome to my channel, a channel where you can learn all the tips and tricks and advice of running an online business and how you can become way more savvy with your content so that you have a constant stream of leads and sales coming into your business. Now, in today's video, I wanted to do a bit of a story time, bit of a new style of video for me on this channel. I wanted to tell you about how I got started in business, how I got to where I am. Maybe you're along the same sort of journey or path, maybe you're unsure of whether to turn right or left, and just to kind of share my experience, because running a business or setting up any kind of business isn't always easy. It's not so straightforward. There's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of self-doubt, there's a lot of uncertainty, and just to kind of normalize the process, because it's not like a sort of finger in the air decision, oh, I'm going to set up my business and then like overnight I'm making like loads of money. So I wanted to sort of normalize my journey. I had never ever considered setting up my own business. When I went to school in Scotland, you go to primary school for 7 years, secondary school for 6. You can leave when you're 16. You can go on to college, university, any of these sorts of things. I'd probably say you'd be hard pushed to find any 15, 16, 17-year-old who knows what they want to do for the rest of their life, me being one of them. I think it's probably rare if someone's like, I definitely want to be an astronaut or a doctor or whatever. So I was one of those people. I knew I wanted to do something in business. In fact, I wanted to be a secretary. You know, it's like you watch those movies in the 80s where it was glamorized, like, is it 9 to 5 and all that sort of thing? There was another one with Sigourney Weaver as a boss and some soft-spoken blonde person that I can't remember, and the Rolodexes and the typewriters. Like, I wanted to be in the typing pool. Like, that's what I wanted to be. My parents trying to like goad me a little bit and be like, what about you become a lawyer? Or, and it's like, no, I want to be the secretary, right? I want to be the PA. Like, those are the sort of jobs that I thought looked glamorous, because that's the sort of movies that I grew up with. So I knew I wanted to be in business, but besides that, I had no idea. So when you go to school and you kind of get to 5th year and you get to 6th year, it's kind of like, all right, okay, let's herd yous all up. You will fill out these university forms and, fill them out anyway, even if you don't know. That way you've got something lined up. And so that just was the done thing. So I went to university because it was like, well, I don't know what else I'm going to do, so I'll just continue on this road. It elongates it for 4 years, so I don't have to like make any kind of firm decisions. So I went along with it. Luckily enough, got the grades to get into university in Aberdeen, into the business school. The course I picked had a placement year in year 3, which had placements in New York and London and France. And I was like, this is it, right? This is my ticket to the big skyscrapers and the Rolodexes and the typing pools, right? This is it. This is how I'm going to get riding the subway with my sneakers on, walking down like, 5th Avenue. Like, this is it. And I'm going to marry a stockbroker, and it's going to be like, and these cool apartments like around Central Park. Like, yeah, that was kind of like, I said, like totally out of like Hollywood, right? Total movie like lifestyle. But anyway, I didn't get the placement in New York or London. I got a placement in Aberdeen. Yeah, hardly skyscraper central. And that was at the point where I was exposed to marketing. And so I did a year of marketing, and it was fascinating. I loved it. I was like, okay, I thought I wanted to be a secretary, or I thought I wanted to maybe be an accountant or any of these sorts of things. But actually, I want to do marketing, right? It's creative, it's fun, it's, so I was like, definitely. So my 4th year, when I went back to university, I specialised. I got all the marketing, like, courses that you could pick, right? I specialised in marketing, and I graduated. Weirdly enough, when I came out of university, I went and got offered a job with the competitor company of the one that I worked for during my placement. And so I worked there for probably about a year, which is fine. I had a boyfriend at the time, so staying in Aberdeen was like high on my agenda. And so I worked there for a year, went back to the placement company, worked there for 8 years. During that 8 years, I just thought, this is how life is. Like, everybody around me hated their work, bitched about it, didn't like it, gossiping, like, oh, did you see that they left at like 1 minute to 5? Did you see they were 2 minutes late back from their lunch? And the whole like Sunday night blues, Monday morning blues, can't wait till Friday at 5 p.m. It just seemed to be the sort of done thing. And I just thought that's how life is meant to be. You just live for the weekend, right? And so I did 8 years of that. Now, I enjoyed what I was doing, the work itself, but the whole like environment around it was just toxic. And so it got to a point after 8 years, I was like, oh my God, like this is really getting hard now, because it was almost like competitive in a way, where it was like, who can send, because emails came in, started before even emails were a thing, Blackberries came in, right? And it was almost like, you were actually wanting to get a Blackberry to set it up on your personal phone. And it became like a thing of who can reply to an email at the most obscene time, like Boxing Day and all this sort of stuff. And I was just like, nah. So around about that time, I got pregnant and I left to have my first child, with absolutely no intention of going back, because I was like, I am spent, like I am done, I can't do this anymore. And I just thought, I'm just going to be a stay-at-home mum now, like that's it. Because again, I thought these were the options, right? You go to university, you get a job, or you're a stay-at-home mum. Like there was just no in-betweens at all. And back then there was no like remote working and all this sort of thing. Freelancing was kind of not a thing, or if it was a hidden thing. So no intention of going back, but randomly enough, the competitor company approached me and said, we're getting a new website. It's the same person who made your employer's website. So could you come and do like 4 hours a week? And that was great. I could do it from home. It, as a new mum, when you're like, oh, I've no idea what I'm doing here. If somebody's like, here's like a little life raft, do something for 4 hours a week that it was almost like a comfort thing. So I did it. That 4 hours a week became a day a week, became 4 days a week. And before you knew it, it was like, our eldest was in childcare and I was working 4 days a week in the office. And again, that was probably another year or two. That company got bought over and I ended up back at the competitor company, but within like literal weeks of being back in that environment with a child in a male-dominated environment, where if you left at 5 o'clock, if you basically only worked your contracted hours, it was like, raised eyebrow not from necessarily management, but from all the people around about, because they felt as if they were getting like shortchanged because they were prepared to do more than, their contracted hours. It was just that weird environment, and I was like, this isn't going to work. I have to leave at this time to get back to where the childcare in time to pick up my kid. They shut at 6. And it was like, this isn't going to work. I ain't going to be made to feel guilty for having a child. And obviously in a male dominant environment, you never want to play the mum card again, is like very like, you feel weak, right? I was like, this isn't going to work. So I completely changed industries. In Aberdeen, it's very oil and gas. So I was lucky enough to get a job in a subsea company, starting at a very junior position. So kind of almost went down a couple of levels and salaries. But again, very quickly worked my way through the ranks, was like sitting in on the board meetings and, as a manager and all the rest of it. A salary that I never thought I would ever make in my entire life. And I was like, oh, now's the time to have a second child. I've got a great salary. Even if I come back 4 days a week or only school hours or something like that, the pro rata it down is still going to be a good amount of money. You're not made to feel guilty here. The culture is totally different. Like this is it, right? But the oil crash hit in 2015 when I was 8.5 months pregnant, and I got made redundant. Obviously, marketing being one of those positions that aren't deemed necessary or essential. And before anybody's like, they can't do that in the comments, they can. If it's deemed financial reasons, they can make you redundant when you're pregnant. But it was fine. I very quickly got over it, because you have to, mindset wise, when you're 8.5 months pregnant. And so I was like, well, at least I'm still going to get my maternity cover like paid out for a year. That'll give me a chance to figure out what I want to do. That was at the first point. I would have been 31, 32 at the time. That was at the very first point that I first thought of starting up my own company, because I knew 9 to 5 was game over for me. I knew I didn't want to work 5 days a week. I hadn't intended to go back 5 days a week, so I didn't want to go and work 5 days a week, because and I wasn't planning on having any more kids, because once you have a child and you return to work, you get these flexibility options that aren't granted if you just start up. And you don't find jobs back in 2015, 2016 that are only school hours working in a high up job in marketing. You just don't. Now, no problem with the remote working and things like that and flexible, but back then, no, it wasn't a thing. So I knew that the only option was to go freelance, was to set up my own company. But I was too scared to do it. I chickened out. I was like, that seems scary. It seems hard. The easier thing to do, ironically for me, was to go and try and find somebody else who'd done that and who was getting at the expansion point, which I found. So I went and joined this duo of guys who were great to work with, had such a good laugh. They were full of ideas, and they were basically doing social media support for £500 a month. They would create the content. It was me creating the content. And they basically just stacked up all the clients because they were good, they were personable, and that's what they did. And they had a bit of clout in the area. And I was in the background silently doing all the work. It gave me an inside peek behind the curtain as to what having your own company looked like, because that was, if I was ever going to set up my own company, that was the sort of thing I would be doing. And I was thinking, they seem to be landing clients pretty easily. I think I could potentially do that, and it would be quite easy. But I didn't want to do it on my own. Still, to me, it was like the easier thing to do is to do it with other people. As an introvert. So I kind of approached them and I was like, do you know what? Let's become like a 3. You guys do that, I'll do the And again, I don't think they realised their potential and their brilliance. Now people can't see their own brilliance, but I saw it. But obviously, it was their baby. It wasn't in their eye line. It wasn't in their plans. They didn't want to do that, which was fine. So I decided, well, in that case, I'm going to go and do this myself, right? So I set out to do my own thing, setting up things like websites and things like that. Logos wasn't an issue for me as a marketing person. Where the problems came for me was things like, what account system am I going to use? How do you set up a limited company? How do you submit stuff to Companies House? And how do you set up like VAT and all this? Like all that stuff confused me. And were hurdles that I really struggled to mentally get over. Interestingly, I reached out to all my previous clients, all my previous employers, and I got contracted by them to do their social media or their blogging, because I'd run a lifestyle blog since it was 2013 I set that up. And so I was working back in the early days of being influencers. I was working with brands and getting paid lots, so creating content for brands, blogging and all that sort of stuff, and working with influencers was second nature to me, but completely bizarre world for these people. So I got contracted to work with these companies, but again, working with them, I was at my ceiling, right? It was like, well, I'm so busy. I'm working evenings, weekends. Where's the flexibility? Where's the, I've basically created myself my own little, that company I originally worked with for 8 years, I've created myself this own little, like, to the wall, and it's great that I'm earning the money, and it's great that I'm invoicing out the money, but I wasn't paying myself the same money, I should say. I sat in the business and I was investing in camera equipment, computer equipment, all that sort of stuff. Like, I basically invested all the money back in. So I wasn't paying myself for the time really that I was sitting there doing that. I was paying myself the absolute bare minimum. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like, this is crazy. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this? Because it's either going to be like that, or I grow. And again, there's no book that's like, and then you go and do this. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to start hiring staff. It's the only way to get more money, or so I thought. It's the only way I could get more money in my business is to hire people, take on more clients, but then there's going to be that dip because it's going to be, I'll have salaries to pay, so I'll need to get more clients, and it's going to take a period of time to get back up to the same amount of profit. I was like, I don't want to hire people. I don't want to have to get an office, because again, back in those days, it's like working from home was fine when it was for you, but you didn't have remote staff. Like if you had staff, you had an office, which then means you have to hire local to your office. And this isn't Glasgow, Edinburgh, London, or New York. Like people don't specialise in Facebook ads and social media where I am back in 2016, 2017. So I was like, this is just, there's not going to be anybody that's, specialised. And I did run some interviews, and the skills set in the area just wasn't there at the time. I was like, oh, this is just how it's going to be. But I kind of like, I'd started to kind of loathe it in a little bit, which sounds crazy, but I did. And that was at the point my friend said to me, why don't you be a micro business owner? And I was like, what the heck is a micro business owner when it's at home? And she was like, well, people like Jenna Kutcher and Amy Porterfield, Melissa Griffin. And so I looked them all up, and I'm like, so these people don't have agencies. Like they're not doing the work, they're not freelancing, they're selling courses teaching people how to do the stuff. Yeah, and they're coaching people and they're group programming people on how to do the stuff. And I'm like, how did I not know that was a thing? Like obviously you see courses and things like that, but I was like, how did I not know that that was a viable business option? Not just in my business niche, but in any niche, right? And I was like, that's fascinating. That's definitely the way to go. So I was like, right, okay, I've got a good amount of revenue coming in here. I'd be stupid to just kick it to the curb and go all in. I'll start that and I'll run it. But it took me a further 2 years to start it and actually get it off the ground. And then I'll kind of whittle away a little bit on this, and as this kind of matches the level of income. But then, of course, I got, I think 6 months into the business or 18 months into the business, and COVID hit, right? And I was like, oh, excellent. So then I lost all my clients overnight in this business, and it all became dependent upon my online business, right? Content clarity. I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And so the pressure was very much on. So it was a big journey learning what I wanted content clarity to be like, right? I mean, certainly the pandemic hit everybody in different ways. I kind of thought people don't have the money to spend, but looking back, that was wrong. People were spending money, and they were spending money on improving their skill set, on courses. So where I withdrew, if I doubled down, I could have been way more successful. But I didn't, because I thought it would be so insensitive of me to like promote anything during this time. So those that did made a great success. Silly me that I didn't, and I could have, but we can't go back. We can only go forward. But what I did do during that sort of COVID time to where we are now is really, like, I invested in business coaches and really tried to figure out, because I was completely warped with indecision. I couldn't decide what to do in this business, because in this space of running an online business, especially in the coaching niche, you can do one-to-one coaching, you can do group programs, you can do masterminds, you can do courses, you can do memberships. Like, there's just so many things. And again, there's no rule book. So it was like, okay, I'll have one of everything and try and spin the plate of promoting them all. And that, that was just an absolute nightmare. So during COVID, what I did was I launched a one-to-one, I launched a group program, and I tried basically the different things, and I used it as a time to sort of figure out what it is that I want. Because again, if you go all in on one-to-ones, granted, there's people out there that charge a fortune for one-to-ones, take on X amount of clients and maybe make 6 or 7 figures out of it, but it still has a ceiling, and it still has an element of like well, I can, can I take the summer off? I mean, you can if you plan it properly, but, it's still very much dependent upon your time. And as an introvert, obviously, courses were very appealing because, again, you create it and it's hands off. Membership. So I set up the Content Academy and launched that during COVID. And during sort of like 2020 and 2021 in particular, I spent a lot of time, money on trying to think about where I wanted to go with this business. And I'm going into 2022 now with a very, very clear idea of what I want Content Clarity to be, how I want it to look. And it's very much going to be sort of semi-passive, passive income with courses, limited sprinkling of kind of one-to-one. But I've also looked at my other business with a completely fresh set of eyes, because I don't have to do work for companies that I maybe don't enjoy working with. And it's not just about the hours, it's about cherry picking who you work with. I now have a fantastic skill set in the art of online businesses, how to set them up, how to run them, how to do Facebook ads, how to do, lead generation challenges and all that sort of thing. So that my agency business can now become me as an advisor or consultant to people who already have 6 and 7-figure coaching businesses on how they can market and improve themselves with funnels and all the rest of it. So now, coming out of this whole period, I now have so much clarity as to how I want this business to be moving forward, both businesses, and make sure that I enjoy every part of what I'm doing. So I'm going into 2022 really excited because I feel like this is going to be the year where it's all going to fall into place. And all the things that have happened up to now that I've learned, that have been a learning experience, are going to just help me make this even better for me, for the people who buy the courses or join the membership, or who, take on one-to-one agency work and help their businesses grow as well. Because essentially where my passion lies and where my enjoyment lies is helping other people. I also worked out that I am a defender in terms of like the 16 personalities test. So I get joy out of helping other people. So to help other business owners, it makes sense, right? So if I can help as many business owners as possible in their business, like, I'm rubbish at accounts. I like go round and round in circles. Like, should I use Xero? Should I use QuickBooks? Should I use Sage? And for someone to be like, this is the one, I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much. So for somebody to be like that with anything to do with marketing, with funnels, with lead generation, with websites, anything like that, if I can help pick them, like, delighted. Like, that brings me so much joy. So I'm really excited going forward with these businesses as to how it's all going to work. But that's how I got to where I am today at the end of 2021. I hope you've enjoyed that story time. I do tend to go on, but it was quite a journey. Let me know where you are in your comments with your business. Are you starting out? Have you been made redundant and are evaluating your options? Let me know in the comments. If you've got any questions, if you want me to go more in depth on anything I've said in a separate video, just let me know in the comments and I'll happily do another video on it another time. But thank you so much for watching, and I will be back again soon with another video. Thanks, bye.